Hello again. A lot of interruption, but I'm trying hard. So basically, if you haven't watched my earlier video, because all you need to be seriously, very keenly aware of what I'm trying to say. So I already told you about to avoid artificial intelligence coming wiping out the job, and then you need to reskill. You need to at least the bottom line to minimize the math poverty percentage share over your country, which your government and the Ministry of Education universally totally failed across virtually almost any country over the past 10, 20, 25 years. At least if you use the PISA math poverty data definition I already in my earlier videos. So let me give you the much bigger picture. I'm going to talk about how can you minimize the danger of economic collapse, the immigration crisis, and all these other things, and the national debt, etc. So basically, the two components and the 7 ministry, the president by default, yes, the priority 1, but the rest, basically, the first group is the Ministry of Education, Economy, Finance, and Labor. And it has a lot to do with the artificial intelligence coming and destroying the job, and even beyond that, with or without it. Second part is Ministry of Population, because the young population are diminishing. You have a population declining in Europe, etc. United States and Canada are accelerating in recent years. So population, Ministry of Population, and Immigration, Foreign Relation. So total 7 of them. I'm going to give you simplify the big picture. If you have any question, contact me through my Instagram and my WhatsApp, etc. So my social network. Basically, so the basic idea is this. Again, the key part is to all this avoid the socio-economic crisis. You need to have a national average. The math ability should rise. Basically, I give you the big picture. My main focus right now, the priority 1 is the minimize the math poverty level. For the developed country, current math poverty levels of the all your country, which have 25-30% basically, more or less, 25-35% basically, is to cut it down to 10-15% range, 10-12-13% range, which is math poverty level of more or less South Korea, Japan, Taiwan currently. The top math ability country over the past more than 10 years, 10-15 years or something like that. So in order to do that, I give you the rough figure. So if you are the way I'm painting you now, this one thing, obviously is going to be best preparation to minimize math poverty percent share, let's say 10% range over whatever these countries, and then you have a much higher chance for the reskill people for the AI range. That is one thing, and this is the labor part is relevant. But how about the national economy? I'm aware of the literature of education economists, the best one in the world, top 5, top 10, whatever you may call them. I'm aware of them. Their projection of is totally wrong. Factor of 2, 3 wrong. So I'm publishing that, but I don't have time right now, but I'll give you basically summary. At least you're aware of it and prepare for it. So basically, if you reduce the math poverty in this kind of country, in this level and fast, over the next 3 to 7 years, in this decade, depending on the level of commitment of the Minister of Education, your president, if your commitment level is lousy and not convincing, I'm going to do the shallow version. If you're totally committed, I'll commit and make it happen. So for this to happen, so let's say quickly it doesn't matter, Netherlands, Germany, France, Italy, and all these countries, Spain, Portugal, and all these countries, Sweden, Norway, whatever you pick, Romania. So for this country, one of the good news is impact will be much shorter. I have all the timelines. I know all the calculation. I know what's happened. So once it's implemented, the reform, let's call it MMU, 0.x reform, once getting done, and over the next 3-7 years, even after the first few years, it's going to start kicking in right away. And then by the time it impact over the next, let's say 7 to 12 years, 6 to 12 years, let's say average like 10 years, especially next 5 to 10 years, the real impact is going to impact the national economy. If you don't really screw up the national policy, economic policy and education policy, commercial policy, international trade policy, something like that, then what's going to happen is, and the relatively linear progression of the national saving, let's say average 2% surplus GDP, real GDP, inflation after inflation, right? That means that if you do the next 5, 7, 10 years the sum, basically you're going to have an average, these kinds of the OECD Western countries have a literally 50, 60, 70% national debt to GDP ratio. This is going to be over the next 10 years plus minus 2-3 years, it's going to eliminate all the national debt. It's great news. You are not going to believe it, but I already calculated. I know it's going to happen. So that's why, and that means over the next, let's say, even 5-10 years, every year, by the time you hit the 7-10 years, you will have a surplus. GDP will be 20 to 50% more or less annually. This will this will give you empower to take care of a lot of these problems. So this is the Ministry of the Economy and Finance. Number two, when this thing happens over the next 7 to 13 years, let's say if you have a 70, 80, 90% debt to GDP ratio, more likely most 70, 80, 90% of them you can eliminate them. Wonderful news, you are not going to believe it, but that's what it is. And for this G7 level countries, 10 richest Western countries, including Japan and Greece, which have more than 200% debt to GDP ratio, the rest of them 10, 100, 120, 30% level, over the next 10 to 12, 13 years, more or less, depending on the scenario that your commitment, and this kind of MMU 0.x operation universally operated in your entire country, let's say, in the more or less than decade, it will wipe out, let's say, 70, 80, 80% of your debt GDP ratio. Instead of 120, 30%, you can shut it down to manageable 30, 40, 50% level. Again, you are not going to believe it. I already calculated, I know it for sure, and that's why I'm saying it. So, Ministry of the Finance and Economy, already I told you. Ministry of Education, I already told you. Ministry of Labor, and this obviously is going to have, if you have a surplus fund of 20, 30, 40% surplus GDP, meaning surplus government income annually, you can fund it to do all sorts of other things instead of wasting money for the building of the weapon military, instead of these idiotic things. As long as you can do something like a population crisis, you have to maintain, otherwise you have to only depend on the immigration, it all have a problem. So the first of four ministry I already discussed already. I quickly move to the next three ministry of immigration and I already did this kind of thing. So let's say currently during the transition, I have a proposal called the OMMU. MMU, I put it O in front of it. Basically, OMMU is the responsibility of the government. MMU is my responsibility. With the government of economy and finance and the labor and the education, I try to convince you to create the MMU certificate. MMU certificate is in the bottom form of the economy. When the AI wipe out all this job, large chunk of the careers in the university become obsolete. You have to, already people like Elon Musk and other innovators have talked about it already. I completely agree. You have to be, instead of wasting time and money and make everybody go wrecked by the university education, instead of that, you need an alternative. And one of the alternatives I try to give you is an MMU certificate, meaning when they have a certain level of math exam pass, at least a survival level, reskill level of math, then they don't need a university education. First, focus on the math, and once it's settled the university next 5 years or something, then we can move on to the basic science as well. The key point is, or technology, key point is at least math part necessarily reskillable. Otherwise, it's doom and fair scenario. Yeah. So in order once the MMU certificate is done, and then one of the key thing is this is going to bypass math education 2-3 years in developed country, let's say, and then that is going to have people will start average about 3 years math ready, meaning they can get the career average 2-3 years earlier, 2-3 earlier higher chance to get pregnant. You got basic point, yeah. And in this scenario, and with the MMU, with the government, I can guide you government once you can commit. So in this way, basically the maximize at least a sustainable manner of having the native population is possible. But native population born to age 20 or so, 2 decades will be necessary, right? So if you're talking about next 20 years, this MMU and OMMU, the MMU certificate trio will resolve the problem. Obviously, you are not convinced, more detail, you can contact me and we can discuss. And this is one thing. And the next part is, over the next 10 to 20 years during the transition, you still need immigrant, migrants, because if you don't have a migrants, your economy will collapse. Who is going to work? You know it, and I know it, everybody knows it. So currently, over the past a few years, entire Western Europe, including the Netherlands, Sweden, Norway, Germany, France, is a hot topic, right? The cutting off the migrant population, whatever. You don't have choice. You have to get the migration. The key thing is, over the past 10, 20 years, a lot of migrants from Syria, the Northern Africa, Muslim population, Muslim fundamentalists, the Shia law, and all these kinds of things cause too much problem. And I understand, the way I understand, the large chunk of the problem of the immigrants, and recently, past 2.5 years, 2 years in the Ukraine as well, but the more problem, critical part of the problem, the average Western European citizens, the problem is Muslim fundamentalist population and causing too much problem. And my basic solution for that is, and there are various ways of doing it, and you already have a first generation immigration there, you have to that, but they have a huge gap with the national average, like a 0.45, 0.6 standard deviation, worse than the national native average. So again, if you go to the Ministry of Education alone, simply you cannot solve it. History proves it. If you look at the past 10, 20 years, you know the story in the PISA. I don't need to repeat it. If you doubt it, check my website, the link below, check it out yourself. So my solution is, at least whoever there is there, and one of the good news for you is I happen to speak 15 languages, not fluidly. 10 of these 15 languages I learned to speak in 10 days. 10 days, 10 languages. Again, you are not going to believe it. I'm going to be crazy, let's put it this way. So the next video I'm going to continue on. Basically, key point is multilingual preparation, and including the first generation migrant, I'm flexible enough to cover all the things, not just to the native languages. And if I don't speak your languages, for instance, entire Scandinavian languages, I don't speak any of them. I speak only 7 Western European languages, and like German, French, Italian, all these things, English, this thing, of course, I can cover. Spanish, Portuguese, all I can cover, but the rest of the Western European countries, and I don't know, but I cannot speak, but based on my experience, to speak at the survival level, Western European languages, 4 to 8 hours, I can speak another language. I'm extremely fast. If you doubt me, well, invite me, and if I can do it, I can do it. And what I'm saying is the survival level, survival enough level to cover this, your math poverty students, and change everything very fast. Time is running out, and I move on to the next video for more about this. Please hold on. Thank you very much.